Thank you very much. We'll enter the final phase. The final phase of our discussions. We have half an hour to open it completely now to the public. This is why I'm sitting here and not on the other side anymore. I'm now part of the public. Just before we continue, let me thank you in the name of Michael Günzburger and all the panel, to the team and to the people filming and organizing. Especially to Anna, who's not just a curator of the show, but takes curating seriously, in as much as curating means to take care of something. Thank you so much, Anna. And I also want to announce, I mean, it was said by Federica, that, now I know, not Francesca, Federica, that the impressionnant of the commission of this year is Michael Günzburger. So if you live here, you can actually very cheaply, Tommy wants to talk about money, very cheaply purchase an original work by Michael Günzburger in a multiple. The museum will be part of Genève at the end of January. So if you're from around there, please come there. And the next vernissage is the 11th of April. Maybe you can talk about what.
The next exhibition will be, we are going to focus this time on the collection of MBAL. We are going to present a sort of best of the collection. We are going to dedicate 3 spaces, the 3 central rooms of our building, to the collection. It's a choice that we made because we also had some critique, so to say, that this is a museum, Musée des Beaux-Arts, where the collection has not his own permanent exhibition, which is not the strategy that we use. We usually invite our artists to enter in a dialogue with the collection. That's the reason why, for example, in the last room and here on the ground floor, Michael in the show also included 3 pieces of MBAL collection. And we are going also to have a show by young artist Augusta Lardi-Micheli, originally from Geneva, but now working also in Neuchâtel. Young painter, very interesting, abstract. And we are having also the exhibition by Jonathan Lenz, photographer. Probably you already have heard of him. It's interesting because he is known as a photographer, but he says about himself he wanted to be a sculptor. So he presents an installation where he's going to include some new photos a series that he created coming in residency in Le Locle, with some sculpture from the collection and some other objects, so to create 28 pieces which remind or refer to the 28 fountains that are the particular aspect of Le Locle. So you are very welcome to come and visit anytime, to the vernissage or later on.
Thank you very much. So please, come back to the museum as much as you can. And I want to start by this collection that you mentioned and that Michael integrated into his show by La Sainte Face de Claude Melon. This in the last room where Michael showcases his collaborations, and it seems that collaboration seems to be a central theme. There is this image of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, that Claude Melon drew like in a very specific way, with one line starting from the tip of the nose and circling outwards, spiraling outwards, and creating this only true image. Because the idea of this print is that it's a reproduction of an original print, of a material print, where the Veronica watched Jesus carrying his cross and took the sweat off his face, and magically, this is a magic moment for printmaking, magically the image of Jesus appeared on the cloth. And because the Bible prohibits us from making images, this was the exception because it was a miracle and Jesus depicted himself. Then it was allowed to copy that image, to create an image. And this is where I would like to start our public discussion now, image making and making an image out of image. So we have these questions of the original and of multiplication of multiples. We have the question of collaboration and of how things materialize. I mean, you talked about these materials and materializations, Inma. And we also talked about control and letting go, which plays a huge part in Michael Günzburger's work. And Marco Ganz told me while I was smoking my cigarette during the 5 minutes, you said that I called Michael a political artist and that I talked about the politics of printmaking, and he said and that you refused for 30 years to do political art. And he said, because to me, exhibiting 50 safety vests in a church in the Venice Biennale is just propaganda, it's not art. And I said it's the worst example of art you could have picked, right? That you could have picked, like this Ai Weiwei thingy of utilizing human suffering for his own goals. But I would maintain, and that I said also, even if you just print 2 fields of color over each other through the painstaking, slow process of making that, by freeing the medium from itself and introducing different ways of using materiality in a process that is not digital, I would maintain that you both are still political, but that might be discussed. From out of all of that, you already said you don't have questions, but I'm not so sure. So we have printmakers, curators, ceramicists, art historians, bookmakers. I don't even know where to start with Sophie Mao. Art historians and aspiring artists in the public. So I'll just walk around and give the micro to everything else. And if you don't start to ask questions, I'll start to ask questions of you. Or maybe you ask each other questions. This is the wide open part of the future of printing, right? Yes.
Sorry for my awkward question. You talked about the future of art printing, about the story of print. And now we are replacing the advertising posters on papers by screens. So I'm wondering if the public point of view will change about the visual paper and the art on paper and the printmaking. So I was wondering what you think about it as a collector, as artist, as yeah.
Good question.
I think this is true that the sensibility to paper and the materiality of paper changes due to the larger environment of the society. But I still think that the art field is separate from it, and that if people continues to go to museum, continues to have other interests, it's the same as with the computer and other devices we use. We use them a lot, but do we lose that tie to paper and materiality? I don't think so, but I think we need to to pay attention to that, not losing that link to it. But I think many places are useful to nourish that link, such as museums.
Thank you for this question. I have nearly the opposite answer. For me, it was that digitalization was in our family was a problem because we lost a lot of jobs in the industry. But in the stone printing, where we are printing slowly, and it was a help because then you have all these things that you was only about money, only about fast producing, they are gone. And today we have only artists who are interested in doing art because you need time, we are slow, we are expensive, and an artist, we are not willing to spend this so much time, and they are not in our field, and even we have this low budget coming up now where artists print by themselves. That's a big help for me. They don't take money away from me. They just switch from a media that's digital, that they can afford, to back to something where they can work. And so, yeah, I would say the future is bright, or at least the sun is out, and everything is changing, of course, but we have to be careful. I agree in this point, so that we don't lose too much knowledge, but the knowledge is moving in other direction. Yes, please.
Thank you. But there is a new relationship with the paper material, because until now the paper can be very precious and very normal. But now even the normal paper, the reproduction of the image are changing, and it may maybe it will be the same revolution when the photography medium arrived and changed everything in painting, the function of painting. And I think we are at a crossroad in printmaking, because the paper is changing of status. Maybe it will be more considered in general, not only in the artistic universe. What do you think?
I think it's an interesting point also. You wanted to talk about money. I think we have the same questions when it comes to money printing. Since the pandemic, the use of paper money is completely diminishing, and that's even more abstract than what you're saying, because here it's just the change from paper to a screen, which obviously has a bodily effect because we look into light instead of like, was that the light sound effect? But talking about printing money, literally printing money, it becomes even more abstract, because now we just have a card and we don't know how much it's worth anymore, while before the value of something, the security of something was only possible through a high-end printing, different high-end printing technology. So also that's a field, like I will do a research project going into printing money, and it's more like printing values, because I think what we still do, and that's where it becomes political again, what we still do, we kind of negotiate the values of our society by what we depict, how we depict money. And so it can be super interesting as an artist to open this as an artistic field and invite people and say, what do we actually print on it? How do we print it? So it's a huge playground that only opens up because it becomes rare. Because before it was just the way you made money. So that's an opportunity actually as an artist to discuss values of our society.
To say it from my perspective, also from the publisher side, the paper topic is really a big one. I mean, it's not just about the sensitivity about the paper quality, paper kinds, or whatever, how to deal with the paper, but also the costs are immediately rised up in the last years. So like for us, which is always, everything is low budget in a way, and we have to calculate every detail. And so paper is really getting effect now. So the artist has to decide what he wants, but also for us, then the situation, if we can afford it, if we can pay for it somehow. So when I started this job 15 years ago, paper was like maybe 80 cents a sheet of paper, whatever. But now we are close to €3 for it, and in our low budget range we are operating. So this is really a point. But if I may ask you as a bookmaker about the paper and craft thing, how important is it for you, the printing technique? Is this something you care about, or is it just about form and design when you're planning a new book project, as you described the poetry one in the beginning? I'm just curious to find out.
Yeah, it's really important, of course, but we do things specially. No, I mean, we don't. For example, the last book, we cannot print it. We have to find some money to print it, and we have a collaboration with Fischer Papier, who offer all the paper. We cannot print it if we don't have this association, and also with the printer. So I mean, we focus our energy to the collaboration and ask people, for example, with Fischer, we said, "Hi, you have a new paper to present." So it's kind of, we gave, we have important role inside the paper factory, the printers and us. So,
but the printing itself is, let's say, the normal digital way. You don't print any details in letter print or try to keep these traditional things? No.
Yeah, it's a pity, but we have like a silk screen studio and we didn't print since 1 year. Because also we have to, we have a space that we must organize everything in, so to share to rent the place and stuff like that. So it's quite easy. We have like really different roles, so we are, yeah. I mean, we sometimes do the job that the city must do, and so we have a lot of things to manage. Yeah.
More questions from the public? I threatened you, if you don't ask questions, I start asking you questions. So Melanie, the future of print bookmaking was in question, right? So I would like you to, because you were involved in bookmaking and maybe still are in the future. So when paper becomes so expensive, who can publish a book, and is there a future in bookmaking?
Obviously, people with the necessary resources can publish books still.
So she works for Hauser and Wirth Publishing, just to clarify that.
I used to. But I actually saw, I had the immense pleasure and privilege to go to the Frankfurt Book Fair last year. And I saw some really exciting projects. And there was one project, for example, which was an artist who had asked the printer what chute de papier, so what unused stock did they still have within their printing house. And basically, regardless of what color, what texture the paper was, decided to produce a book with that. So there was also this intention from the artist to disregard or sort of put their work on a second plane to what materials were available. And so there are ways to work around that in that way. But I have another question which might go in another direction. And we've been talking a lot about results and the artist process and not getting results, but I was actually interested in the manifesto and why there was this manifesto that was being produced in the dark.
So Michael can answer this question quickly because you commissioned the manifesto.
Well, manifestos are always these very fragile constellations because they pretend that there's something and that this is it, or they're actually point of discussions. And in my trips through, or like the few things that I've seen in printmaking, maybe I've seen a bit more than a few, I thought like, manifesto is something that is usually printed anyway, so it's kind of self-referential in this case, and I always like this loops when there's something like this happening. And I've heard a lot about, oh, it's endangered, it's like, whoa, it's threatened, what are we doing? There's a lot of fields. So that's a bit of the setup here also, like what are these different voices telling us today? And I think the manifesto asking Leila to do that is also a way to set things, because I know she knows a lot about printmaking, even though she wouldn't admit it mostly. Right? Yes. Yeah. And also loving her work and loving your writing. So I thought that's going to be a great thing to spread physically, to print that. And also we're doing a publication to this exhibition. I was thinking what will last from this exhibition, because if I just print an exhibition catalog that shows my work, it's a bit boring. So what can be a contribution to the field of print, and something that goes way beyond that? So the manifesto will be the insert of this publication, and it's also a form of scientific contribution to the field. So one of many reasons why to do this manifesto, to actually have something to discuss about. It's a discursive piece.
So this contains and pertains to the things we didn't discuss when we talk about the future of printing. We didn't talk about artistic research, for example, as a means. I mean, Inma quickly kind of mentioned parts of it when she talks about fossils and frottage and all these kind of things. That's something that we need to talk about in a different moment of time. Bookmaking could be expanded. I'm just happy to point out that there's a book by Michael Günzburger, which he published together with Lukas Perfuss, a German-speaking writer. It's called Contact, and it's actually about contact and traces and la piste, so to speak. It's available here. Please have a look. And before we wrap up proceedings, as you have convened us, Michael, I would let you ask the last question, and then anybody who would like to go into the question, we can take it from there. And before you will ask the last question, I'll ask you what you asked of us. What will you print next? Don't act surprised, it's the title that you've given us.
Probably I'll just use a laser printer to print out the to-do list I did. So that's the next thing I'm going to print, being very pragmatically. And then there's other stuff coming up, which would go into the research chapter. So I'm just starting a research project which is strictly in artistic practice and is all print-related questions. But we've talked enough, so I will spare you these details, but I'm happy to talk about it when we actually started, or later here. And I don't think I will do a variation of the questions, because I think we've talked enough. What do we print next is, I think, the questions to all of us.
Well, then we end it on this note, and it just remains for me to thank again the team and the museum for hosting us, to Theophile Glauser for being here, to Inma Herrera, Michael Günzburger, Tommy Wolfensberger, Christine Sandercock, and Laurence Schmidling, and Dirk Dobke, and to all of you some of you actually stayed here for the entirety of this long conversation and discussion. Thank you for having, first of all, taken the time and also stuck with us. And I'm sure we can have a coffee now and talk about more practical things like printing out lists and everything. Thank you so much.